Welcome back, and welcome to part 2 of LewyT's Amusement Academy. In part 2, we're going to learn about some different shapes of objects that we can put into our game. Then we're going to color them and play with some game physics. Be prepared to back up and re-watch parts if you need to. So what else can we put in this game? We're going to right-click in the empty spot in the hierarchy and go back to 3D objects. There's a number of options here. There's sphere, which means ball, like a ball shape, round. Capsule, cylinder, plane. I won't bother with some of these other things. I do want to show you some of them later, but let's start with just the basics. So I'm going to add a sphere. Put it over there. I'm going to move my view over there to look at it a little bit better. Looks like a half of a sphere because it's partially embedded in this other floor object. I can move it up so we can see it. So there it is, the full sphere, and it's casting a shadow also. And I did want to bring back around to this idea of the light. Looking at that light object, it shows which direction the light is coming from. This bright spot in the sky is also representative of where that light's coming from. So you can see the shadows correspond from that angle of where the sun is. There's a sphere. I'm going to right click again. 3D object. Look at a capsule. This is what a capsule looks like. It's kind of like a sphere with a middle section that's straight. Okay, let's do another one. And this one is called a cylinder, which move it over here. It is like a capsule, but instead of being round on the ends, it is flat. So I'm gonna move my view back up so you can see the top of the cylinder and the capsule is actually round. It's actually a round tube shape. Okay, what else was there in here? 3D objects. Plane. Okay, I just made a plane. I'm gonna have to back up for you so you can see it. It's actually on the top of this object. It's like the floor, but it's not. It doesn't have any thickness. This floor cube, it's not a cube, but it's a floor object, it has an X, Y, and Z size. So it's like a box, but the plane is just an X and Y, or maybe an X and Z is more accurate here. We'll move it around so you can see what it is. Back up a little bit more so we can see it. Move it over here. It's just a big square. Now we can scale it just like we would the box. Bigger in one direction or smaller. Bigger or smaller in another direction. Let's make it bigger. But this third direction, which is Y, it doesn't do anything to try to make it bigger in the Y direction because it doesn't have any, there's nothing, its size is 0. And you know a little bit of mathematics, anything multiplied by 0 is still 0. So it does not matter how much you try to scale in the Y direction, it will not get bigger because there's no thickness at all. If you move your camera to look along the edge of it, it is like paper thin. In fact, it's thinner than paper. It's non-existent in thickness. That's what a plane is. I do want to introduce you to other ways of moving, rotating, and scaling objects. I'm going to click on this floor box. And over here in the inspector, there's position, rotation, and scale numbers. Now you can click on the X and drag it, and it does the same thing as if you were dragging that red arrow, assuming you were on the move. The move is for position changing. You can drag that. You see how there's a number and it says 2 point something. You can actually write a different number in there. Say I want it to be 5. Boom. or I want it to be 0. So let's make it all 0. So y0 will go down. Well, actually, it'll go up because we're a negative y. So y0 goes up. And z0 will go this other direction. So it's that exactly 0, 0, 0. That's the middle, very middle of the world. This other plane, we're also going to make it 0, 0, 0, 0. If you click on a box and you can type or whatever in that box, and then you press the tab key, it will move to the next box. It's assuming that the next box is what you think it's going to be, and use that instead of clicking. But sometimes it's easier just to click. I'm going to put 0 in there, tab, 0 in. So now it moves it over. It's basically the same position as the big box. This flat plane, it's actually wider, so you can still see it around the outside of the box. If it was smaller, it would just be inside the box and you couldn't see it. The scale of this plane, I want it to be very big. So let's do 100. And look how far it goes off in the distance. And then that's the x. Now, if I put 100 in the y, it doesn't do anything. There is no y distance that it's at 0, so it doesn't matter how much I multiply it. 100 times 0 is still 0. So I'm going to just go back to 1, which is the default scale. And then on the z, I'm going to make that 100. It'll be this other distance. Now, we have a plane that's actually very big, stretches off into the distance pretty far. I'm going to click in the sky to deselect that. I'm going to move these other objects around, position them onto the bigger box, and then we will see what we can do with them. I'm going to move them up in the y direction so that they're not touching the box. I want to introduce you to some more of this complicated stuff in the inspector. You can see that there's sections. So the first section is the transform. We've already talked about the position, rotation, and scale that you can hand type into the transform. The next thing is the mesh filter, and in this case it's a cube. This is what gives the cube its visual look, so it looks like a cube because it's got the cube mesh filter. And then there's the mesh renderer, which goes along with the mesh filter and allows it to be visible. If you deselect mesh renderer, it visually disappears. And mesh renderer has a few settings that you can make it work in a different way. And the next section is box collider. The box collider is what makes it work like it's a real object in the game. If during the gameplay 2 objects come in contact with each other, they are stopped by their colliders. And box collider is just one type of collider, and things will be stopped unless they're forced to go through each other. Like whenever I'm moving in the editor, I can move things through each other. They don't get stopped, but during the gameplay mode, they won't automatically go through each other unless you force them to. So now we're going to add a new component by clicking the Add Component button, and we're adding the rigid body. You start typing rigid body and it will come up. Click on the first one, it's the regular one, and it adds the component. So there's a new section here underneath the box collider. Now, another thing that we need to make sure of is that the other box also has a box collider, and of course it does. They were both just default cubes when I brought them in, so it also has a box collider. And now let's click play and see what happens. Now, did you see that the little box fell down and settled flat on the surface of the floor? That's what rigid body does. It gives like physics properties to your objects. They just have to have box colliders so that they don't just fall through the world and keep on falling forever. Using rigid body physics is really fun, and you can simulate realistic movement this way. But be aware that if you get a lot of objects moving, then it can slow down your game frame rate. Rigid body has several settings and properties, but the one I want to point out to you is use gravity, and this you can just uncheck and it will turn off gravity for that object, and so it will not fall. Or rather, it won't fall by itself, but it will still be pushed around by other objects if they come in contact with it. And if I turn gravity back on, then it immediately falls. As you can imagine, that kind of movement could be handy in a game, and so a lot of games use that physics type of system. Rigid body is one type of way to apply physics to an object, and so lots of games use that so that things interact in a kind of a natural way that you would expect them to look in the real world. We might do more with that later, but I want to introduce another basic concept that you will want to do. You might notice how everything is very boring looking. It's all gray. The only reason we can see anything is because the light is shining on one side, and so the other side is dark, and there's shadows and stuff like that. But let's make things a different color. I'll show you how to make one. Make the material. So this word material is based on like how the way things look in the game. So what color they are, if they've got any other texture or shape, like the way they reflect light, and if they're see-through or not, or anything like that. So one thing that you want to do in your game, let's take this time to look at the project tab. So as with other tabs, you can actually move the tabs around. You can say I want it over here instead of that one, or you can move it back. You can actually move it. I can move a tab and say, well, I want my project to be up here with a hierarchy. So just put it over there. But it really makes sense for it to be more of a wide rather than a tall panel. So I'm going to move it back over here. And you can snap it into different positions, or it could literally be free floating. Just say like that. And so it's just a separate window. I'm going to move it back because I really like it right there. So everything that can be in your game is in the project, and everything is actually in the game is in the hierarchy. So hierarchy, these has all these objects that we've got. They're all represented in the hierarchy. But let's say we right click, we could add another object, something that we haven't added before. We've already done a plane. Let's do a quad. Now, honestly, quad is very similar to a plane, just a square. And you can move it around. It's, for some reason, it's oriented in a different angle. But it now is in the hierarchy, whereas you can have lots of things in your project that could be in the hierarchy but aren't yet. So I just wanted to make that a distinction. I don't really want this quad. I'm going to hit delete, the delete key, and it goes away. So in your assets, you can arrange things in folders the way that you want them. And I recommend keeping different kinds of things in their own folders so it's easier to find, because by the time you've created any kind of a interesting game, there's going to be lots of things in your project, and if you don't have them organized in folders, it will be difficult to find them when you want to. So there's, by default, there's the assets folder, which is where everything is, and then inside the assets folder is the scene folder. Your basic default scene is in there. The settings, I We won't go into that right yet. And then there's tutorial info. I think that's basically a tutorial associated with this default scene. It's not my tutorial. This is something else. I won't even bother with this. You can get that information from Unity. But what you can do, so if I select on assets, I'm seeing everything that's inside assets, and I can put stuff here too. So I'm going to right click in a blank space. Let's create something. What I want to create, the material. So this is like a color or a texture that can be applied to an object. Click material. That's the symbol. The icon represents material. By default, it's just called new material. That's fine. If you start typing, it will change the name to something else, or I can just click off of it and it will keep that name. Now you notice that the name new material is too long to fit right underneath this icon. So if it has an important name and there's more than one thing that has similar names, you might have trouble figuring out which item is the one that you're wanting to look at. So just know that when you select something, the information is over here in the inspector. Another way you can see the names more clearly is by this little slider at the bottom of the project is a zoom slider. Now, you make things bigger, you can see bigger names, but they can only be so big, and the names can actually be even bigger than that. So if you make it all the way to the bottom, small, it goes from being icons sitting side to side to just a vertical list. Now this whole horizontal row could be the name. This new material, by default, is the same as all the other materials because it's just the default material. It's just gray. It looks kind of slightly shiny. Pretty boring. Now, if we go over to the inspector, there is a lot of information about this material. And we can change some things. Let's change the color. So if we're going to change the color, it's going to be the base color. This is a very simple material, so it only has one base color. So we click on that white. So this white rectangle that comes in there by default is like just a representative of what its color is. So it really thinks that it's a white color, but it's only white when the light is shining directly on it. The place that has the most direct sunlight is white, and everything else is something a little bit darker. So if you click on it, you now have a color selector window. There's lots of different options. So the main thing is you've got this big circle, and it's all the different type of hues of color. And then this middle box allows you to go from being very red, very whatever color the hue is, or it can be more white, or it can be more black, or it can be somewhere in the middle, like kind of a dark pink. So we're making a color that's kind of a medium gray pink. And you can close this window, or you can just click off of it. If I click somewhere that's not a button or anything, it just goes away. So now we have this material. It's this kind of a gray pink. Now, what we can do is we can drag this material icon from the project into the world. We can drag it. Now, because it's a material, it's not an object that can be sitting in the world independently. So you can't drag it into the sky. You have to drag it onto something else. We can make whatever we want to drag onto change the color that we've just created. So this medium pink, it's not my favorite color, so I'm just going to put it on the ground. So I let go, and now it's applied to that. Now you have this color. You can paint anything you want to be that color. So let's also put this thing on this other capsule. So it's pink and the ground's pink, but these other things are still gray. So let's make a new. Right click in the blank area in the project, create a new material. Boom. new material 1. Now, for some reason, I don't think I can change the name of the material in the inspector. I have to change it here. So, because the other one was gray, I'm going to call this one dark green. And I'm going to left click and wait a little while, and then left click again on the pink one. I'm going to say medium gray pink. So there's the name of that material. Go back to the dark green one. It's not really dark green, so we're going to change the color. We're going to go in the circle. We're going to move that to the green area, and then in the square, we're going to make it a dark green, and we're going to make it more green. So the other one was kind of a gray pink, but now we're going to do a dark but richer green. It's pretty much on the right side, which makes it more colorful, but it's still low, which makes it dark. Now there's all these other options too. You can basically get all the same colors by moving these other sliders, and then there's like preset colors. I'm sure you can play around and get all kinds of colors that you might want. So feel free to do that. Now we have a dark green object. I'm going to move a dark green material. I'm going to drag it onto the plane in the background. Ooh, that's really green. Another thing you can do is, instead of dragging it onto the scene view, objects in there, you can instead drag it into the hierarchy. So I want to make the cylinder green also. So put it here and let go. And as you noticed, when I did this, it did not highlight the color green until I let go. Whereas whenever I move it into the scene view, as soon as it touches something, it changes the color, but you can move it off and then it changes back. But in the hierarchy view, if you drag a color, it applies only when you let go of the left mouse button. Let go, and now the plane is green. I mean pink. I'm going to make it green again. There's pink, a green plane, and a pink floor. We also have a green cylinder and a pink capsule. So let's make one more material. Right click in the project, create material. Let's make something yellow gold. Yellow gold. Let's make this a yellow color, and we're going to make it a pretty bright yellow. But now we're not just making the color colorful. We also want it to be look metallic like gold. So let's move this metallic map slider, and as you move it, it becomes more shiny. Let's make it very shiny. If you make it all the way shiny, it will look quite golden. Now we have a gold color material. I'm going to drag that onto this ball. Let go. Look how shiny that is. Let's also make this cube gold. Now, as you can see, the cube being gold looks different than the ball being gold because of their different shape. We can rotate and see the goldness a little bit better. See how shiny it is. Now, that is basic colors. We're going to preview what the game looks like now. Oh, I forgot to turn the gravity back on for the cube. Let's turn gravity back on. Use gravity. Boom. As it moves, you can see how shiny it is. Stop it. I want you to notice something. What I did was I turned on the game. I started the play button, and then I realized the gravity was not on. and I turned on the gravity, but when I stopped it, gravity disappeared again. So let me just demonstrate that again real quick. Play. Turn on gravity. We're in our inspector, we're still looking at the cube. The gravity's on. I'm going to hit stop. Keep your eye down there at the gravity checkbox. Boom, it's gone. So this represents a particular thing that you need to understand about Unity is in usually whatever state something is before you start, that is its default state. And so whatever changes in the game, it will snap back just like the object appears back in the air. When you stop the game, it's back to the beginning position. Also, a lot of these settings work the same way. So if you want it to start off with gravity, you have to go stop the game and set the gravity, and then the next time you start it, it will have gravity. I also want to give gravity to the golden ball. It doesn't have a rigid body, so I'm going to have to add that. Do that. It's got gravity by default. I'm not going to change any other information about it. One thing I do want to change, I want to make it kind of close to the edge of this floor. So let's just play again, see if it interacts, falls down on that floor. Boom, there it is, it fell down. I was hoping to make it fall off the edge, but I guess I didn't put it close enough. So let's this, move it a little bit further over. And from the camera view, I'm gonna go find my, actually I can just click it on the, here, I'm gonna double click. I can see the camera. I want to right dragging to rotate my view, and I'm gonna middle drag to pan my view, rotate, and I'm gonna move my camera over here to see things from a different angle. Way over here, I'm gonna go look from the top down. It's not even looking at the world anymore. So what I'm going to do is rotate the camera so it can now look at the world again. Whoop. That. Back. I'm going to go to the game view. You can still see what the camera is viewing, even though the game isn't playing. So there's what it looks like. I can't even see the ball, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to back it up. Use the green square and move it back a ways. Double click. You double click on an object in the hierarchy, it zooms your camera and moves it around so that it's viewing that object. Okay, that's kind of a good view of what we're looking at. If I go to the game view, we can see everything. So play, see how things move. Fall down. The ball fell off the world and starts rolling away on this gigantic plane. And I think it'll just keep going until it falls off the plane, and then it'll just keep falling forever. Thank you for watching LewyT's Amusement Academy Part 2. Come back for Part 3, and we will learn how to make a character move around in the game.